Hello, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to our second day and second panel of this gender and emotion conference. We are happy to have you, and we're happy that you are joining us for today's panel, which is titled Reframing the Role of Women. And we have three presentations, and then we will have some time for Q&A. But before and after the presentations, we are lucky to have Dr. Sharon Bong from Monash University in Malaysia, who will be giving us some comments about the papers, but also giving us some short introduction about the theme of the panel. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm sorry. My name is Bernardo Brown. I'm an anthropologist. I'm associate professor of anthropology at the International Christian University in Tokyo. And so without further ado, I will invite Dr. Sharon Bong to give us a short introduction to the panel, and then we can move on to the first presentation of today. Dr. Sharon.
Thank you very much, Bernardo. Hello, everyone, and good morning. I hope we're all in the same time zone. I'd firstly like to start by thanking the organizers, Isaac, the Initiative for the Study of Asian Catholics, for inviting me. And I am particularly pleased to be on this panel because it's so highly gendered. And that was why when Michelle invited me without hesitation, I said yes. And then I thought, okay, what other commitments do I have for the morning? And I like the title of the panel, Reframing the Role of Women, because it suggests that there is what I would see as a political dimension to the act of calling to question the current position and treatment of women, that whilst the church recognizes as women created imago Dei, in the image of God, and therefore infused with human dignity, but there is, as the title suggests, a discrepancy between the way women are actually treated and positioned in the church. And the three papers bring that out really well. And the fact that the title of the panel sits within an even more fascinating title, which is the title of the workshop, Gender and Emotion. There are many reasons why it is highly problematic to put the two together, gender and emotion, but the three papers do it in a way that allows them to, and allows others who read it to think through what it might mean to challenge and to tease out, what this might be in terms of doing church in Asia Pacific for the Catholic Church, to challenge the whole repositioning of women, a better appreciation, and to include, to work towards more inclusive societies, since this is the whole synodal path. So that's the introduction to the title of the panel. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sharon, for your introductory words. And we also look forward to your comments after the three presentations. So let's start with today's first presentation. We have two presenters, or a co-authored paper by Jacob Lynn from University of Otago in New Zealand, and on the other side of the world we have Lillian Bushway from Williams College. So you have 15 minutes, please.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having us. I don't know if Jacob wants to introduce himself real quick, because I'm about to take over for this part of the presentation.
So the idea was I do the Q&A and she will do the presentation. We co-author together. Yeah.
Okay, I believe that I'm sharing my screen now. So good morning and afternoon and evening, depending on where you are. Today, the title of our presentation is Did Maliya Sajiao? And the idea is we're going to delve into the intricate concept of Sajiao and its implications within the Chinese Catholic Church. As a second language learner of Chinese, Sajiao has always been super interesting to me because it's a concept and a word that doesn't have a great direct translation into English. The best that I've seen or come up with is that it embodies the act of acting like a child, which carries a pretty negative connotation in English, but its interpretation in Chinese society is usually much more nuanced. And Sajiao itself is something that usually involves a soft, high voice, a demeanor of vulnerability, an element of cuteness, and it's predominantly associated with femininity. It can be used to make requests or express emotions and opinions. There's a wide range of types of Sajiao, and part of the difficulty with our paper will be sort of where each individual woman draws the line of what's an acceptable form of Sajiao and what's an over-exaggerated, unacceptable, immature form of Sajiao. The modern women who Sajiao seem to, I'm sorry, this is in the way, I just realized, seem to descend from two ideals of women in Chinese history. One is the revolutionary woman, from whom they get sort of their strong opinions. And the other is the Confucian woman who's more reserved. And this sort of gives to the modern Sajiao user the stereotypically weak and dependent behavior, which again is tricky terminology to use because that gets negative very fast when it isn't always a negative thing to do. Our study centers on whether women who employ Sajiao within the Catholic Church in China, in church context, do so voluntarily or feel compelled to do so. Furthermore, we want to investigate how this phenomenon reflects the treatment of women within the Catholic Church hierarchy. While non-females can Sajiao users are typically women. Thus, we investigated Sajiao as a form of gendered communication. Gendered communication has been a prominent study since the 1970s and 80s, when scholars established that the social construct of gender manifests in gendered communication, revealed through communication patterns. While we've read through many studies on Sajiao and what it looks like in different contexts, none of those contexts have included its role within religion. And specifically within the Chinese Catholic Church, there's a lack of studies exploring gendered communication. Our study aims to fill that hole and bridge that gap by taking Sajiao as our launch point for a discussion about gendered communication within the Chinese Catholic Church. We aim to uncover how gendered communication within the Chinese Catholic Church mirrors existing gender roles. For our method, we conducted online interviews with women in various roles within the church, and once we finished interviewing them, we transcribed, translated, and coded their responses. We received 17 voluntary responses from women across northern and central China. Some of those roles include catechism teacher, volunteer, social worker, nun, caregiver, and choir member. Women also came from both patriotic and underground churches, which, depending on which one, might have had an impact on their experience. Our questions to delve into this idea encompassed 4 key areas. First, we wanted to establish their role and activities within the church, so we knew sort of in what context they were interacting with male members of the church. We wanted to explore their understanding and perception of Sajiao, because like I said before, lots of people have lots of different ideas about what is considered Sajiao and what is considered acceptable Sajiao. We wanted to assess if they use Sajiao as a means to gain a listening audience, and if they feel heard by the clergy in general. And then we wanted to identify desired changes at the parish level for increased representation to enhance communication. So our discussions had some compelling insights. The first was in how these adult women referred to the younger women in the church who Sajiao. One of the women said that we do see examples also demonstrated by young girls who are essentially spoiled and view services that they receive as deserved and would Sajiao to get them. And they also said the younger generation wish to pursue their own dreams over the goal of the church. They bring their Sajiao and other spoiled manners into the church. They think boys should do the labor work and the digital work, not them. There are two things to think about when saying that younger women are Sajiaoing. These younger women are coming out of childhood where Sajiaoing in childhood is just considered being a child. And so they're sort of growing out of that pattern, but I think these women are highlighting the fact that the older women are highlighting the younger women Sajiaoing in the church because they want these younger women to take a more active role within the parishes than they got to take. And so they're worried that they're not setting themselves up for success and are not being helpful contributors to the parish. But also these comments reveal a sort of negative perception of Sajiao from these older women. However, when these older women were asked if they themselves Sajiao, we got two sorts of responses. And it wasn't always negative that they were Sajiaoing. We were told that women often feel compelled to employ Sajiao to navigate interactions within the church, catering to societal expectations of femininity. Due to the gender disparity, women, when talking to male Catholics, need to appeal to them in hopes of being listened to. So one woman said, when we asked if she Sajiaos, now you have said it, I do think that I have done Sajiao. This is just a way to appeal to the nature of men. When you're dealing with others, you show your weakness to express yourself more tactfully. So Sajiao is her way to gain a more sympathetic male audience, but she also has to pay the price of reinforcing the stereotypes of women as whiny or weak and dependent when she does Sajiao. In the other direction, another woman noted that if she does Sajiao, it's viewed as immature and un-Catholic, which she thought was unfair. As we outlined above, Sajiao is not always a negative communication method. It is often used to express emotions and deepen personal connections. However, because of this sort of false dichotomy and expectation from male clergy that if one is a mature Catholic, they will not Sajiao, she is not able to authentically express herself by using Sajiao without being dismissed by the clergy. Following the above two findings, and I think this is probably the most interesting insight that we got throughout our work, is that we learned that the church doctrinally and spiritually and emotionally is being run for unemotional parishioners. Most of the women we interviewed do believe in fundamental differences between men and women, and that's where they identified the problem being. They identify emotional intelligence as a woman's strength, but feel that discussions of emotion are swept away by clergy, sort of because the male clergy don't think about things within the church as emotional or spiritual, or in emotional ways. They're more doctrinal and pragmatic. And also by taking away these sort of emotional spaces, by sweeping them under the rug, they're taking away opportunities for women to have leadership positions, because that's where they would have the most strength, according to these women. The women said specifically that women seeking emotional support are often met with lectures on theology rather than genuine empathy from the clergy. The choice from laymen and priests in prioritizing doctrinal authenticity over emotional support perpetuates a climate of fear and dismissal, which holds women who wish to express these emotions submissive, and emotional spiritual events are not taken seriously. We had a few other findings throughout our interviews that were not directly related to Sajiao, but were about male-female relations. We found that in church responsibilities, the gender disparities persist, with women bearing the brunt of non-liturgical tasks, yet receiving inadequate credit. One woman says that when it comes to cleaning the parish, priests don't have to help, but it would be unacceptable for a nun not to help. I think the middle quote on this slide was the most striking to me when going through the interviews. She's, look, these women are very talented and are very spiritual, and you're getting rid of their qualifications and resources, and you're just wanting them to be housemaids. So, and another quote, which sort of just speaks to the extent to which this happens, is one woman said, even in terms of the graveyard, the clergy took away 3/4, even though there are way more nuns. So it's a pretty dominant experience. Finally, decision-making positions remain inaccessible to women. So this underrepresentation moves on towards when there's decision-making processes within the parish. So it hinders their meaningful participation. Since women continue to be viewed as either weak and immature if they Sajiao, or unfriendly and kind if they do not, they aren't taken seriously in organizational matters. One woman said that at parish council meetings, ideas brought to the council by male parishioners were given more consideration than ideas proposed by nuns. And this woman sort of summed this up well. We need the church itself to break down the gendered hierarchy, because if we were the ones demanding, they would label us as problem-creating feminists. So it just speaks to the box of restraints that these women are being put in. Finally, we just wanted to note some of the limitations of our study. The main limitation is that our responses were voluntary. And so, we only got responses from Central and Northern China. We got a limited number of responses, and the people who decided to respond were most likely to be people that had stronger opinions about the topic that we were proposing to speak about. Another limitation was that we sort of had to decide to work within the gender binary social construct due to the existing research on Sajiao and the frameworks within the Chinese Catholic Church as of right now. We had to work within that gender binary, which does not address the place of people who identify as non-binary. And then finally, culturally, it's quite awkward to ask someone straight up if they Sajiao. So when we were asking the women we interviewed about it, we sort of had to go a bit of a roundabout approach, sort of first asking about Sajiao in general and about other people Sajiaoing. And it was just sort of a tricky topic to navigate. Okay, so looking forward, we think that to address the persistent gender disparities, systematic reforms are needed at both the structural and cultural levels. And it should be noted that most women we talked to were quite adamant that no theological change be made. They weren't advocating for female priests, but many did hope for, where they didn't have it, the chance to participate in the liturgy and sort of voting rights in parish councils. Initiatives aimed at increasing women's representation in decision-making processes and leadership roles must be prioritized. This includes implementing mechanisms such as parish council systems where women can democratically participate in shaping the direction of the church and allocating its resources. Additionally, efforts to challenge patriarchal norms and dismantle barriers to women's advancement within the church are essential. In conclusion, our study sheds light on the intricate dynamics of gendered communication within the Chinese Catholic Church. Addressing the persistent gender disparities requires structural reforms and a cultural shift towards inclusivity and genuine empathy. Thank you all for being here. We'll welcome any comments, criticism, thoughts, help. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lillian. Thank you, and Jacob, for your presentation. We surely would have some questions that we hope Jacob can also address at the end of the panel. Thank you for keeping the time. So then let's move on to our next presentation for this panel. Let me move this around here. Our second second presentation for today is by Julia Ong, Sister Julia, who I think now is in Singapore. Are we all okay? Sorry, I saw the computer. Oh, there we go. Who is, I think, in Singapore. And the title of her paper for today is Indian Women's Tears with St. Joseph at Bukit Timah Catholic Church. Sister Julia, you have your 15 minutes now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bernardo, and thank you for having me. My presentation, now I'm trying to, yes. The main emotion that I'm exploring in this presentation is pain. And I'm using the Indian women's pain as a starting point, and then looking into the emotions that surface in the document at the continental stage for the Synod of Synodality that exposes the emotions of the clergy and the tension between the clergy and the laity, especially with women in the archdiocese. And so with the emotions that are played out, I'm looking into the politics and the identity that emotions have shaped. So there are two sites that I'm using that are saturated with the emotions. First is the statue of St. Joseph's that's at the Bukit Timah Church, and then the text itself, the document itself, because the meeting of the delegates of the synodality were also in this church. This is the St. Joseph Church in the early days. And what we are looking at is St. Joseph, the large statue of St. Joseph right in the middle and up front. It is on top of a hill. And so when one climbs the hill, you are approaching a St. Joseph that is like a sentinel welcoming you. And it has a very significant effect. So this is the church in 1962, and you still see St. Joseph in the upper level, and he remains there as a guide, as someone that I felt I could return to at the end of the day of my work. And he was there to hold you for whatever that you had in the day. This is part of a poem that was written by a parishioner when the church celebrated 150 years. And it shows evidence that how the feet, especially this left foot of the statue of St. Joseph was kissed and rubbed and showered with lots of touches to communicate their gratitude, their prayers, and their emotions of the parishioners, particularly the Indian women. Here is another evidence of a St. Joseph feast day, whereby the parishioners are queuing up to kiss his feet. This is a close-up on how he looks like. And he has a very concerned look on each one before him. This statue of St. Joseph is special because in all the parish anniversary magazines, there have been lots of records of miracles and encounters that parishioners have, and including those who are non-Catholics, they would have met a man who have approached them in different capacities, and then later on recognized him to be this man of this statue in St. Joseph's Church. Now, I have to temper this picture in order to show you how there has been a corrosion of the toes of this statue, because there were many Indian women who would offer salt because it's part of the culture, particularly the southern Hindu Indian women, and they would cry before this statue. 20 over years ago, I was in a community in the neighborhood, and I have seen individuals, different women, crying to St. Joseph of their pain and rubbing his toes. And so St. Joseph has become someone, a person to many women, particularly the Indian women. And this is testified by the Indian lady who is a sacristan till today, and she is aware of the community of women who finds a comfort in St. Joseph. However, in 2011, there was a major renovation, and from as you climb the hill, we only see the head of St. Joseph compared to before. That's fine, but there was this fence that was erected around the statue of St. Joseph. When I saw it after returning to this church after many years, since I've moved away from this community, I was taken aback. And the spontaneous emotion that surfaced was feeling insulted and offended, because my immediate concern was, how would those Indian women be able to feel felt and be able to touch this St. Joseph's foot and feel understood. So I was surprised that the pain that had been actually objectified around this space, because that was in 2011. And since I was there over 28 years ago, when I witnessed the women and the corroded toes of St. Joseph, it was a gap of many years. And in 2011, I felt that being pushed out and pushed back, as the Indian women could not reach St. Joseph. And it is only in last year, when this paper was, when there was invitation of this paper, and I was surprised that spontaneously the emotional memory surface was about the pain the women felt. So the politics of fencing off reminded is very much a way of how we have structured our relationship in church. And it brings me to the Jerusalem temple, of how the court of Gentiles is similar to the Hindu women, and including Catholic women, and how women who practices using salt as an offering to petition, particularly about their marital woes, at the outside, at the edge of the temple. And so now we will go further into this structure. This is a picture of how in India salt is being offered. And so there's this saturation effect in this site of tension. Because I wanted to do this presentation, I visited the church again and I interviewed the Indian lady sacristan, and then I got information to reach out to the maintenance manager as well as 2 priests, and they were uninvolved. The maintenance manager could not tell me whose idea and when it was the fences were installed. And the priests were telling me that they are not aware of any Indian women crying before St. Joseph's, and they were non-committal. I was also trying to ask if any effort in the church community made to reach out to the women, Catholics or otherwise, who are in tears, and also to dialogue about their way of offering salt, to engage them and to invite them and reach out to them. But I had no answers. And what was interesting was that the Indian lady sacristan says that till today, the maintenance manager is very upset when Indian women who now could not reach the toes of St. Joseph would give a little money token to the cleaner to ask him to use a pole and put the garland onto the hand of St. Joseph. So no foot, the hand will do. So it is quite a desperate or an emotional need to reach, to touch, and to connect. And so, okay, I'm now into the next section. So the Indian women and her tears in relation to how they are now being fenced off brings me to the second layer of my presentation, when the Synod on Synodality had a gathering in the nave behind this very same statue. And now we are going into this section whereby you have the court of priests, the men, and the women. So this is a quotation from an extract of 3.2 of the document at the continental stage. We see it being emotionally laden. I was actually surprised that this came through in that document, and it was talking about how the clergy felt they were being treated. Our priests actually feel burdened, made to feel inferior, disrespected, robbed, rights denied, lack of support, made to feel inadequate and relegated. And I sincerely hope that this is not a result of a projective identification, something that actually I have all the while thought that women felt this way in relation to the clergy. So I was puzzled and at the same time feeling and wanting to honor what it has been expressed in the document. Then with this quotation, and I did a form analysis of the text, the whole document, and there was a repeated mention of the magisterium and how we need to follow the guiding principles. So for every text that was mentioned, yes, we understand the need of to recognize women and their roles, and to involve the laity and clericalism. Then it will be supported by, however, we must look at upon the magisterium and the Catholic moral principles. And in reading the text, I felt that a second fence was being put up. Just like the fence around St. Joseph, I felt like a pigeon prevented from perching on the fence and to be near the Holy of Holies. And so, drawing from Sarah Ahmad's insights, it is this so emotions, whether the emotions of the Indian women or the emotions that were expressed in the document, was set up to fence ourselves and define our political boundaries and identity. And so now we go into, yes.
So Julia, we have one more minute, please.
Okay.
All right. Please, thank you.
Yes. And so this is a Hebrew reading of what a woman is. And in conclusion, the document came out strongly about how the clergy and the relationship with the laity is a role identity. So I am proposing that we actually need to also investigate and relate in our emotional identity and as felt bodies who would surface another level of need and depth that is necessary in the church. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sister Julia, for your presentation. It was really, really very interesting. And okay, so now we can move on to our last paper presentation of today. And we have in Indonesia, Yulia Aron, and the title of her paper, if I say it correctly, is Deri, Gete, Devotion or Curse. Julia, please, whenever you are ready, you have your 15 minutes. Thank you. There you go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for time you're speaking to me. Hello everyone, my name is Yulia. I'm from Malaysia. I'm at administrative program on the community, Kahe community, one of the art communities in South.
Julia, sorry to interrupt you. Can you try to speak a little bit closer to the microphone because it is
Okay.
it's very hard to hear you. Thank you.
And we do not see your visual.
Perfect. There it is. Thank you.
The title of my research is Deri, Gete, Devotion or Curse. Why I use this title or why I research woman dedicated to my topic for research, because Gete is a local term used by the people of Maumere, a categorical expression for those who choose to be celibate. The reasons are, of course, varied. His choice is personal, but of course has a bias with existing social construction. Gete is not only a term or expression, but also a paradigm for those who hold this status. Social bias towards status is historical, form, and needs to be explored. I have detailed this presentation in four parts. First, we will talk about the history of the church in Flores. Second, Maumere in religion and culture. Third, the Gete is in society and the church. And finally, about the question which is still relevant today, the Gete is devotion or curse. So first, we will talk about the story of the church in Flores. Flores, a small island in eastern Indonesia, has been a center of Catholicism since Portuguese time. After the Catholic religion became the religion of local people, the moral teaching offered by the Catholic Church began to be lived in daily life alongside existing traditional and customary tradition. Some beliefs that have been lived and inherited from our ancestors are still maintained. This photo I use one of the old church in Malaysia, Church of Saint Ignatius Loyola in Chicago. The faith and belief taught in the Catholic religion give birth to a new perspective on various life issues that intersect with ancestral cultural heritage. Try to understand traditional culture and tradition through the lens of the Catholic faith. Therefore, the church and culture are two important foundations for society in assessing and responding to various social change that occur. Second, Maumere religion, Maumere in religion and culture. Jika regency with Maumere is as its capital is one of the regency on Flores Island. The spread of Catholicism in Flores, brought by Portuguese missionaries, also had a significant impact on the economic growth and development of the city. The change implied other from a traditional religion to a Catholic one brought a new perspective for the community and living the new life model offered and taught by the church. Many Catholic congregations, monasteries, and seminaries that prepare teachers Catholic priests are built and work in this place. The mission works is evident in the growth of faith, urban development, especially in the fields of education and health in the city. To this day, dozens of monasteries can still be found in the city. After the mission spread and made Catholicism one of the religions of the local community, custom and tradition are still lived as a guide to community life. Not only believing, but simultaneously living the custom and cultural tradition. Women in Maumere culture have a special place, especially in marriage procedures. Kataduan na hanggang woman must have a price. The value of woman in Shika's traditional marriage procedure. search Deri Gete in society and the church. In Shika culture, women who choose not to marry for life are called Deri Gete. This life choice is still lived by the Shika community today. The Gete refers to a woman's lifelong decision to remain unmarried in order to serve her family, care for her nieces and nephews, or a lifelong single life choice in Shika society. The power of empathy is evident in the devotion of the Gete women to their parents and family. The simple reason that I most often find is sensitivity to the suffering, pain, needs of parents and even brothers and sisters in the family. Participating in meeting the needs of the family, whether the economic needs of the family, the needs that are closely related to psychology, such as attention, love, and support for each family member. In social life, there are various views on this life choice. Dedicated women are involved in community life through various village work programs, weaving studio group, and group form to support the work of farms and their income. Through these various community support skill in weaving, dedicated women have the space to socialize with their leader community, super skills in weaving, farming, and even establish relationships with outside community or society for the progress of the program that is tied to together. Though there are many activities involved dedicated women, not a few people still give a negative stigma or stereotype to this life choice. Some negative stigma or stereotypes are still given to women who choose this way of life. Some of the negative stigma or stereotypes that are often found are that targeted women are seen as socially undesirable and labeled as thinkers. Their life choices are also sometimes associated with mystical magical beliefs that are still believed by the community as a curse due to the family's failure to carry out traditional customs. The Gete women are not only involved in village programs, farmer groups, or meeting studios to learn to develop their interests and skills. The Gete women are also actively involved in church. Faced with various stigma and views of society about Gete, the church becomes a second home that provides space and opportunity for the survival of the Gete women. The moral teaching of love that always echoing the church become a support, life motivation, and positive belief in Gete as a life choice that is accepted in religious life. The Gete is a church that unfolds as a historical story. As far as the research carried out, the author has difficulty determining how this term emerged and developed, but the stigma and views towards the delegated way of life have patterns that can be traced so far. The author's temporary hypothesis is that there are several factors that shape people's views on this way of life. First, the arrival of the church not only moved Aron with all forms of pastoral care in the field of health and education, such as hospital, monastery, school, but also belief and perspective on life and the social change that occurred in it. For the church, there is a view of celibate called celibate. This is based on Matthew 19:12. This difference in view ultimately for negative stigma, stereotype as well as support or strengthening for those who live the Gete life. Apart from social construction formed from the church of tradition, custom, and culture, the author personally found that the power of empathy as a strength of the female psyche is an important thing that supports the determination to believe in the path of life they choose. Okay, before ending this presentation, I would like to say thank you to INCAD for the study of Asian Catholic.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We enjoyed listening to you. And now we have a few minutes for, sorry, I have a computer problem here. Okay, here it is. I'm sorry about the delay. Okay, sorry, here. Okay, so thank you very much for the presentation. And now we have a few minutes for Dr. Hello, can you hear me now? Yeah, I'm sorry. There was I had a small computer problem. Thank you very much for your presentation. And now, and thank you to all the authors for keeping within your time limit, so we can keep in time. And now we have a few minutes for Dr. Sharon Bong's comments about the responses to the papers, and then we will have a few minutes also for a Q&A and opening to the floor. So if anybody has a question that you would like to, you can raise your hand, or you can type in the question in the chat box, so that the authors can already start preparing the answers to your questions. But now let's first listen to Dr. Sharon's response. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernardo, for that. And to the paper presenters, I enjoyed listening to you live in action, and also, of course, before this, reading your full papers. And thank you once again to Isaac for this privilege. I want to pick up on a point that I made in the introductory remarks on the title of the panel. So I didn't get a chance, because I was reminded I only had 3 or 4 sentences, and so I thought, yeah, I might be rambling a bit. I wanted to pick up on an earlier point that I made about why gender and emotion is problematic. And for those of us who are familiar with the literature, it's problematic because it draws on Western metaphysical thinking that aligns man with rationality and women with emotion. So emotions then, because anything that is aligned with women and femininity then becomes, in the process of not just theorizing and theologizing. So even our church fathers are, complicit in this. So emotions historically is seen as unseemly, inappropriate. And so because it's aligned with women, you'd find this hugely problematic positioning of women then as inferior. So it adds on to the inferiorization of women. So that's why when we bring gender and emotion together, at the outset, that seems problematic. But I do salute Isaac on this emotional turn and recuperating and bringing to the foreground emotion, because in the ways that the presenters and the paper writers have shown, emotion is actually a very powerful tool, both methodologically and also in terms of its impact on what it could do. And because there's so much of rhetoric in the couple of years leading up to this year the Synod on Synodality, what it means to be respectful of equity, diversity, and forging an inclusive church. How do we actually walk the talk? Yes, are we being, hypocritical, or are people actually earnestly and sincerely wanting to change the things within the Catholic Church and structures that actually need to change? And so the 3 papers, I have read it and I'm now going to be offering what I see as 2 theoretical lenses that thread through the 2 papers. The first of which is my favorite theoretical lens, and that's a feminist one. The second is a decolonial one, because we are about doing church in the Asia Pacific. So we have 3 social cultural contexts, the first of which in China, and then Sister Julia's paper is contextualized in Singapore, and Julia Aron's paper in Timor, Flores specifically, and in Timor. So a feminist lens, if I may, Jacob and Lillian's paper draws explicitly on feminist standpoint epistemology, and that is a feminist framework that I use a lot in my own research on gender, sexualities, and religions in Southeast Asia. And what's particularly powerful about feminist standpoint epistemologists is that they critique the way mostly men, and this includes male theologians, have gone about the business of knowledge production and also theologizing, because previously the bulk of scholarship, and this is also the weight of our theological canon, has rested on the position of those who are in power. And so basically we're talking about male privilege. This is about naming, yes? And in feminist standpoint epistemology, one of the first things to right that imbalance is to accord epistemic privilege to those who are on the underside of history, because history is also written from the position of the powerful. So the underside of history and in contemporary times are basically the women that are foregrounded in each of the 3 papers. And that's why I find it particularly interesting. And so these are women's lived realities. And in Jacob and Lillian's paper, it's the women, the 17 nuns and lay Catholic women who feel they have to amplify a particular kind of feminized cuteness to get around power dynamics within the church and faith communities that, they have to navigate, right? And it reminds me of Gayatri Spivak's use of the term strategic essentialism, because here are women exaggerating or amplifying a particular kind of gender communication to forge through the many layers of obstruction and barriers to gender justice within the church. So there are negativities, plus points when women have to play down their talents, and I think all of us, as in the women in this room and those we know who are not in this room, Sajiao, to a large extent, yes, we play down our talents, our intelligence, in order to appease, because there's a very real culture of fear that already perceives women as a threat and cages them. And that brings me very nicely into Julia's fences, yes, the double walling and the fences. And thank you so much for those lovely images and for doctoring St. Joseph's feet. So, and in Julia's paper, she, brings in affect theory, and Sarah Ahmad, one of my favorite scholars, feminist, post-colonial scholars, but she's gone on to do other wonderful things. And the privileging or giving voice to the Indian women. And when I read that part of your paper that talked about how the priests were just completely clueless that there were these women who were doing it so often, not just on the feast of St. Joseph, I thought, it may sound sexist, but typical, right? But these are the women who know because they do. So these are the women who cry at the feet of Saint Joseph. And what I particularly appreciate about Julia's paper is how she has situated herself and brought in that moment of her intense reaction in being walled out, similar to those Indian women. And this is what feminist standpoint epistemologists do, because they are calling to question how male scholars have set up objectivity. What does it mean to be an objective, social scientist? It means that you must, throw out emotions, because that's what objectivity is, right? But Sandra Harding, who's another key proponent of, feminist standpoint epistemology, talks about how critiques that kind of notion of objectivity, understanding and practice of objectivity as distance from the feminine. So it's very powerful what this conference sets out to do in bringing gender and emotion together, and in a way that Julia's paper in particular shows, when we cry, when we rage, so anger is very, very powerful. And for me personally, that's what set me off as a feminist, and anger at the Catholic Church. So these are emotions, and what is powerful about emotions is that it disrupts these walls, in the way that, Jacob and Lillian's paper named it as patriarchy, clericalism. So these are the walls that have been set up. And how sincere is the church really in terms of breaking down these walls on its path to synodality towards a more inclusive church. And then in Julia Aron's paper, so you have what many would feel, if we look at it from maybe a Western feminist lens, as kind of problematic, dowry as signifying the value of women, the dignity of women, and Deri Gete, women who opt for lifelong celibacy. But when you read it from an empathetic lens, and also this key internal factor of empathy that Julia celebrates in her paper by interviewing and observing these women and the pivotal roles that they play in their family because of love for their parents and love for the children of their siblings, and very clearly, circumnavigating marriage for themselves, which suggests that there is a lot of subservience that is attached to being someone's wife and mother of your own kids. That's my own 10-minute timer for myself. And so we can, empathetically appreciate how these women take on voluntarily. So there's a lot of female agency and autonomy that comes across the paper by adopting lifelong celibacy. Yes, lifelong celibacy. The second theoretical lens that I appreciate from these three papers is a decolonial one, insofar as they are challenging systemic injustices within the church in terms of its hegemony. So in the first paper, Jacob and Lillian's, it's the clericalism that they've named, the patriarchal structures that they have named. In Julia's paper, it's the type of hegemony in both Julia's papers. It's both the hegemony of the Catholicism. So what I mean is that Christianity has come to the Asia Pacific as a colonial heritage. Christianity has come to us as a colonial heritage. And so Julia Aron names the Portuguese as bringing on, and it's the same as well in Malaysia and Singapore, that the Catholic Church comes from the Portuguese colonizers. And so in Julia's paper, it's interesting in one part of her paper where she talks about how devotees in the Hindu and the Chinese temples are, breaking the invisible wall and breaking this sort of boundaries, yes? What is considered as pure and pollution, that other old binary of purity and pollution, and women's bodies as exemplifying that are women's bodies that leak, because of our menstrual blood and also because of tears. And how these devotees, very ordinary religious practices, are breaking these sort of hegemonic boundaries of what constitutes, this particular religion or that particular religion. And then Julia names it. Is it sinfully syncretic, or is it, creatively inculturated? And of course, Deri Gete is, in the way that Julia Aron celebrates it, is a traditional practice. Yes, it's an ancestral practice that the locals, especially local women, although local men also do it, but it's not encouraged, you know, and they're very quickly set up in arranged marriages because men are considered as superior beings, yes, not just in Flores, but elsewhere as well. And so when, you know, women do it, it's their way of melding. And so we can see the porousness of these traditions. And because they are very present and actively present in the churches, so it also pollutes, in the best sense of that word, yeah, what it means to be Catholic as a Deri Gete. So I'm going to leave before Bernardo silences me. I think I'll leave you all with these comments, and just to say that I, you know, thoroughly enjoyed reading the papers and just watching your oral presentations because the papers came to life. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sharon Bong, for your comments. I also agree that I enjoyed very much these papers, and I really also made me give some very interesting ideas. Your reading and your comments on your thoughtful comments on these papers. So thank you very much. So we have a couple of questions, but before that, I would like you to ask all of the 3 or 4 presenters if you would like to address Dr. Sharon's comments, or if you'd like to respond to any of the points that she has raised about your own work.
Yeah, I think the case about China is very particular because we're dealing with not just the Christianity as a European ideology, but we're also encountering maybe communism or capitalism and a lot of different ideology that all from the West. They all have their fingerprints and the formation of Chinese idea about what femininity is. So we're dealing with a lot of different positions. And one of the challenges of dealing with that is while we, as we said, doing our research, we basically affirm the gender duality or a lot of ideas that may be very popular in the West. But while we're doing that, we sense that a lot of our, I would say, all of our participants are being incredibly uncritical about this kind of definition that we'll be using. This terminologies about men and women, and what is viewed as mature, what is viewed as good, Catholic, and those things are there. And they just say, well, these things exist and we're just using them. I think that is a step that we have to take into consideration. But another thing is, in terms of a lot of this kind of situation, we are dealing with the infusion of local tradition, Catholic tradition, and the Western culture together. And it's really hard to separate them while we're doing this research.
Thank you, Jake.
This one.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob. Anybody else would like to address Dr. Sharon? A 3, 2, 1. Well, if not, we can go directly to these 2 questions that we have actually from one of the panelists, from Sister Julia. First one towards Lillian and Jacob, and the second one towards Yulia. So who would like to go first? Maybe Julia, I cannot see you now. Are you not there now? Oh, there you are. There you are. Yeah, would you like to address this question? We cannot hear you now. No. No. Okay, if you want, like while you try to figure out your tech problems, maybe either Jacob or Lillian can answer to the question that has been posed by Sister Julia.
All right, I will respond then. So the question is, while it is a communication behavior, what could be the innate feelings that may not be a word while a person Sajiao? So I would argue that since Sajiao is something that have existed in the culture for so long, a lot of them actually believe that women are incapable of achieving a lot of stuff and they need to approach to a man in certain manner that will be motivated to do things in their behalf. And so in that case, we see internalization of the gender stereotype in general over there. And that's absolutely the case when we talk to a lot of the more older nuns and laity within the church that we encounter that criticize women for being that. So I would say when they were doing that probably at a younger age, some of them definitely have this thought in their mind. Whereas the other people that we talk, they merely view it as a way of avoid confrontation, to show the priest, we're not going to taking away your rights, your privileges. We are merely there trying to voice ourselves. And so in that case, what is in their mind sometimes is disagreement, discontent, or ideas that they wish for a better, more inclusive church, and those could be the inner feeling. But we didn't want time to have a lot of discussion on that particular case. But I think one of the examples that we see during our interview was the fact one of so it was basically one of the cases where a bunch of nuns disagree with what the priest was doing, but only the younger one was able to voice herself because she can get away with that. And so a lot of people wish to voice themselves but cannot. So that's a very particular situation in that case, and indicates that what's being done emotionally may not align with what's actually in their heart.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to follow. Julia, are you able to? Were you able to fix? No, is she here? I can't see her. She's not. Were you able to fix your microphone situation? No, right? Apparently not. Well, if you can, we still have a few minutes.
Well, she typed it out in the replies.
Okay.
Because I suggested to Julia that she could do that. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Sorry. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing that. I didn't see I was scrolling all the way down and I missed her type. Okay, there you go. Thank you very much for that. Well, we have a few minutes for other questions. If you have, I have my own question that I wanted to raise. I know that Lillian and Jacob have specifically addressed the question of synodality, but I would like to bring that back in and also relate it to the other two papers and ask in which ways do you think that the let's say changes implemented or that are expected to bring about and by the synodal way, what changes would you expect to see in your own research, in the problems that you are trying to address in your work? Yes, Sister Julia, please.
Yes. Because of the nature of the work and the synodality, so I have submitted my paper to the Cardinal so as to encourage dialogue. The work, this paper is not meant to just for this particular presentation, but also to create awareness and then to invite a reflection on how is it that both the clerics and women in the church would feel the same way, that they are not recognized and, well, in very explicit terms, robbed of their responsibilities. And if, as church, laity, the women could feel that way, and surprisingly, the clerics also, then there is a great need to even to relate and to put down our roles, identity, and to listen to one another as human persons. Thank you. So I hope that that would ask for some response. I have received no reply from the Cardinal.
Interesting. Okay, we have a few more minutes. If you have if there are any other questions.
Can I respond to that question?
Yeah, of course, you go.
The first question. Yeah, so so one of the things that we even though we did not put that specifically in the presentation, but we did acknowledge that we're doing this synodality related research. So one of the things that we talking to other people was that apart from a few nuns, most of them say this is their first time hearing anything about the synod of synodality. And that's something really shocking to me. But then we went on to talk with the more sort of people more experienced on this topic. We come with one response saying, whatever decision they're making wrong, you will depend on certain people to translate them and to put them on Chinese social media so someone could see. And because the Chinese social media regulation, that would take ages for someone with official capacity to do that, or it will be translated through sort of more underground channels. So it will be real. It says it takes about a year or two for any new messages from Rome to reach China, at any large scale. When that happens, it's usually in more northern dioceses or more of the coastal dioceses, for example, in places like Shanghai or in Hebei province, where there's a very strong Catholic, both underground and above ground churches, which has a very strong connection with Rome and have incentive to do things according to what Rome wishes. So if anything was going to happen, I think it's those areas. And also it also happened in those areas. Nuns and laities are running a lot of organizations. They are much more independent and much more self-sustained compared to other regions in China. So anything that's going to change will start within those places. I don't think it's bureaucracy. There's a lot of intersection of Communist Party bureaucracy and the official church. So that's also a lot of things that need to be addressed. One of the very interesting parts was the representative of China, one of the representatives of China, the Synod, which is one of the first time since the revolution any Chinese clergy from mainland actually participated in the Synod. Those ones were picked were infamous within China being bootlickers in China. They just pandering to the government and have nothing bring on the table in terms of spirituality. So it will be a really uphill battle that a lot of people have to vote.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine it's gonna be not easy.
Yes, I have
Yes.
a question.
Yes.
I find it very interesting to use Sajiao as a entry point of your research. And I'm curious, how did you arrive at or decide that this is a way of your research?
I'll take this one mostly because it's on me. I think, like I said before, I'm a Chinese learner, and Sajiao was something that I just kept seeing in Chinese movies and TV shows, and I was doing a summer intensive program in Chinese, and I had a bunch of young women teachers who often like portrayed this Sajiao, but it was in this and so I started to sort of ask about it in the most polite way that I could, and they were very nice about like letting me sit down to interview them about Sajiao, and it was just it required such a fundamental shift in the way that I viewed things to accept that this in their minds that this Sajiao was not inherently bad or inherently like weak of them to use this sort of communication method, and so sort of this perception of that behavior that was very starkly different from sort of my Western background made me feel like this concept was very distinctly Chinese and Taiwanese and potentially East Asian, but I don't know enough about the other cultures to generalize to that extent. So I thought that it was very distinctly Chinese, and therefore was very curious how it played into the way that women interact with others in the church.
Yes, very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your answer, Lillian. Any other questions or any other comments that you would like to raise?
No, I want to say thank you to all the speakers because yes, you proved how valuable this kind of investigation are, and how we can we need to renew this kind of conversation on and how emotion is probably a good way to not be attacked of being some kind of Western ideologies trying to whatever influence the church, but to simply question the ways in which things are taken for granted sometimes, and for yes, ecclesial logic, but listening again to Sister Julia practice, it's also a broader cultural pattern that, how to say, most of the Indian heritage here is erased inside the church, but also in a broader society, or how to say, or it's very sidelined. So yeah, so thank you so much for this.
Yes, thank you very much. I also want to join Michelle in thanking all of the presenters, and thanking also Dr. Sharon Bong for her thoughtful comments on the panel. And to finish, I want to invite you also to join us for the next panel, which will be tonight at 8 p.m. Singapore time, on ecclesial authority and emotions. Correct? At 8 p.m., right, Michelle? Yes, I think so.
8 p.m. tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night. Sorry, not tonight. Yeah. Tomorrow night. Sorry. Tomorrow night. Okay, well, thank you very much. It was good chatting with you, and I learned a lot. I really enjoyed this this panel. Thanks, everybody, and have a good day. Good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.